Loki, A Gentle Rain, and Imperium. This is Staying In.
There is apparently like a, is it a mental condition? I don't know, but it's a thing whereby people get genuinely aggressive when they hear eating sounds from other people. There is a specific thing, and it actually makes people really upset and aggressive, right?
Oh, the sound of masticating.
Correct.
That
Correct.
ASMR, said very, very carefully.
Very specifically.
The ASMR of it.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of like, you know, scrunching kind of sound that you get when you're eating your food, or if somebody's, I don't know if, because obviously I don't know if, you know, Kris, I don't know if you've listened to an ASMR video, but you know when when you had, like, you were at school and there'd be that one kid who would eat with their mouth open, like, all the time, and because, you know, they hadn't been raised right, and like it's that sort of sound I think that people really don't like, that they don't.
To be fair, for me, my ears disagree with ASMR. My wife loves ASMR and finds it very soothing, but for me, it's that those sounds just go straight through me.
Right.
It makes me kind of like flinch.
So Dan, so what soothes you to get to sleep at night?
Well, I used to go to sleep, and I've used it for, I think I've probably mentioned this before, I've used this probably 10 years at least, and it still works, is the audiobooks of Harry Potter read by Stephen Fry.
Okay, now, is it specifically because there's lots of nice words that you like muggle and hocus pocus and Sauron?
You fell at the second hurdle.
Yeah, right. Is it that, or is it Stephen Fry's lovely voice?
I think it's Stephen Fry's lovely voice.
Yeah,
that kind of monotonous is the wrong word, because it's not monotonous, but that kind of gentle hum of it. Because I'm not like the world's biggest Harry Potter fan. It's not like I'm obsessed.
Well, you are. You've listened to the same books for 10 years. I mean, how many times have you read them officially? Because, like, you know, if you listen to a book a night.
But as a test to see how well you think this is in 10 years, okay?
Yeah.
How many playthroughs of the books do you think I've gone through?
2 playthroughs of all of the books. How many books are there?
7 books.
7 books. So 14.
And this is every single day.
I'm currently halfway through June, and I do that in about 10-minute bursts when I'm feeding Hugo.
Well, the way where I put it like a place of a chapter on, and then I play it, and then I fall asleep, and then I play it from the last bit that I remember, and then I play again, and I fall asleep, and that's how it works. So I incrementally increase, and there's certain chapters it takes me a long time to get past. Certain chapters I get through quickly, but 10 years every single night.
I reckon you must have gone through it like at least 10 times, the entire series.
So you're saying it takes me a year to listen to the series?
It's got to be, right? About a year? A year a series? Yeah, why not?
Well, Sam was closer.
Really?
I'm on probably midway to kind of, I think I'm on like book 5 of my 3rd playthrough.
Okay, all right. So what this really says is that
it works.
You are out like a light. Like,
I tell you what, I'm currently at a moment, and it occasionally happens where I play a certain chapter, and for whatever reason I just can't get to the end of it. I fall asleep every single time, and I've been on a chapter for about 3 months now, and there've been so many times I've been like, I'm wide awake tonight. I'm going to put it on. I know I'm going to get to the end of the chapter tonight because I'm wide awake. 10 minutes later, boom, I'm out like a light.
Have you ever been tempted, Dan? Because you know, in like apps like Audible, you can increase or decrease the speed of the telling.
Yeah.
Have you ever been tempted
Chipmunk
to do that?
up, Stephen Fry.
I've got no need. It's the design is it for it to send me to sleep, and it does it perfectly. I've tried other things as a variation. I tried the BBC radio adaptation of Lord of the Rings. It's far too stimulating. Kept me awake.
So I think one of the things that we should talk about is, why don't you mix it up a little bit, Dan? He's just, you know, Fry's just done the 2nd collection of Woodhouse adaptations. So he's just done a bunch of Blanding's Castle stuff. I think so. You'll get introduced to some really awesome characters that are
incredible.
They're genuinely incredible. You know, he does the Jeeves and Wooster stuff in the 1st collection, or, you know, some of the Jeeves and Wooster stuff in the 1st collection. He's also got, obviously, you know, we talked about, you know, some of the other audiobooks and stuff that he's done and the books that he's written, but there's tons of stuff. He's done Sherlock Holmes. You could mix it up. You could go to
Mythos as well. Mythos.
Yeah.
But I'm not interested in the content. That's the thing. Not that
Yeah,
I'm not interested
asleep.
in
What does it matter? You've already read the books. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I see where Dan's coming from on this one. Like he's like,
I'm interested in all those things that you say.
yeah,
But
you're
I
gonna be
don't
able to-
listen to it because I'm interested in it.
But the problem is, you're not going to be
right.
able to listen to them, Dan.
Exactly. I'll be asleep.
Yeah.
So Dan, I'm going to drill down into this. When you see Stephen Fry being interviewed, you start to kind of just go. Your eyes start to get your eyelids start to get.
I do
heavier.
become a bit more relaxed. Yes.
Oh,
I kind of sink a little bit deeper into my chair. My eyes start to droop. I have to snap myself out of it.
So on Sunday, it's happening. It's finally happening. We all know the big event that's going to be happening on Sunday.
Desperately thinking what other events are happening. Sam. Oh, actually, I know.
It is a delayed event. It's been promised for so long, but it's going to be the first time that I know it's for me. I don't know about Kris, but it's going to be the first time that I go to the cinema since February the 2nd, 2020, where I went on my own to go and see Parasite. But yeah, Kris and I are going to the cinema on Sunday to watch Black Widow.
Yeah, and Sam, how many other people will be in that cinema? Do you think?
Because some other national event appears to also occur on that day, I did briefly just check to see if we could amend tickets, which we can't. And considering that we've already pre-ordered food, like our total bill was like 50 quid. So yeah, it would just be us, Kris.
So have you booked tickets for the same time as the other national event?
Yeah, well,
Or is it just on the same
no,
day?
it's at 9 o'clock at night. So
yes.
For those not in the know, Sam and Kris are talking about the European Football Cup 2021.
Oh, you're so close. Pete, you are so close. You are so
it's
close
not the
to
European Football Cup 2021 either. So you got the year wrong
and
the competition.
It's the teams England versus Italy.
So I think I'm gonna watch the first 20 minutes with my father-in-law, because every match I've watched partly with quote unquote a grandpa, England have won. So I feel like I need to get that in the bag, and then I don't know what to.
Because I mean, that's the only way they're going to win.
And I don't know what to do. Basically, pre, during, and post Black Widow. So do I picture in picture, considering we're the only ones there? Sorry, Kris, it'll be a bit annoying for you, but you know.
Sam,
I could.
This is a train wreck
I could
already.
80s sitcom style earphone in, cheering at inappropriate moments in Black Widow.
So hold on, pre, during, and after, Sam. This is what you're going to be doing. Pre, do whatever you want. After, do whatever you want. During, please watch the film. Please just watch the film. Like, you can just, like, Dan recorded it. He's already shown you can record.
Yeah,
matches.
but the thing is,
Yeah, but no, hang on.
it's slightly different because that film's going to finish going to be out of there about 11 o'clock. I can't come home and then watch an hour and a half of football in that time.
Also, potentially, there may be a very little chance of Sam being able to get home without finding out the results.
Right. So this is this Black Widow movie. Is it a movie? It is,
Yes.
isn't it? It's not like it's a proper movie.
It is a full-blown movie, yes.
Because there's been a lot of. So is this the first movie by Marvel Studios after the finale of Endgame?
No, they did Spider-Man.
But was that
Far From Home?
But was that Marvel Studios?
That was
Yeah.
Marvel Studios in collaboration with Sony. Yes.
So if you talk about it in terms of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there was a break for COVID, and this is the first one that has been
This is the
released
first one back.
since kind of... They break their films into phases, so the ending of Phase 3 was Endgame, and then Spider-Man Far From Home. That was the ending of Phase 3. This is the first film in Phase 4.
With the TV
So-
series kind of keeping the hype going.
Yeah.
Right.
Fleshing out that world a bit more.
And this is, my understanding is that this is a prequel?
For very specific reasons, it is a prequel. Hashtag maybe spoilers.
I think at this point, if someone is listening to this podcast who is a Marvel fan, who wants to watch the films, and who at this point hasn't seen Endgame, I think there's no hope for you. I think spoilers are okay for those films. I think we've already spoiled it in the past.
Yeah,
anyway.
Well, the fact that if you went to go and see this film anyway, or if you've watched any of the TV series, the end of Endgame is ruined in the opening title sequence. Then I think like it's pretty much they kind of assume that the second biggest film of all time, the majority of people who want to see it will know what have gone on. So
we'll probably.
I mean, that's a fair assumption.
So, what have the TV series been doing then? What have they been prequels?
Whatever the hell they like,
right?
Which is great.
Yeah, the TV series have had a little bit of carte blanche. Obviously, there's a degree of fan service there, but one does get the impression that they're not expecting every person on the planet to get a Disney Plus account. So theoretically, if you just wanted to go to the cinema to get your Marvel fix, you're not going to feel like you've missed out on stuff, because the events of Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home, say, for example, even if you just stuck with the films, you wouldn't feel as if, hang on, there's a kind of a massive gap here. What the TV shows do is kind of embellish that gap and develop characters, in particular characters that are often in the kind of in the sidelines, perhaps secondary or tertiary characters in the cinematic series, now becoming much more prominent, and you're actually ending up with a TV series spending much more time with these characters than you would have done through any of the films, really. So that's been really quite an interesting experience, really.
It'd be interesting to see how the following films pick up the threads laid out in the TV series, because for me, they seem to be doing a lot of heavy lifting in a good way. What they're doing is they're taking characters from the Phase 3 time, taking them forward and kind of developing them. So when they reintroduced, they can be in a slightly different position. So far we've had WandaVision, which we've talked about before, and WandaVision leaves the lead character of Wanda in a very different place to when she finished the film, the previous film she was in, which was Endgame. She's in a very different place then. We've seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which again has left both kind of characters, especially the character Falcon, in a very different position to where we left him off. And now we have this new series that's come out recently, which is Loki, which, for my money, and I absolutely adored WandaVision, because all the stuff it was doing I thought was fantastic. I thought it was doing really interesting, different stuff, taking the MCU in a completely different direction and kind of really committing to that. You then had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which to me felt like it was fine. It very, very much felt like we have to do this because we have to get to this story beat, so we just have to kind of get through this. And now we have Loki, which again feels like WandaVision did, in a sense of this is doing interesting stuff. This is talking about things that I never thought the MCU would talk about. Now, I'm not going to go into spoilers because there's so many twists and turns, and it's a fantastic ride to be on. But quite early on, you find them talking about the ideas of philosophy and fate, and what does everything mean, and if you do this, how can it react on different people, and are we all destined to follow fate, or do we make our own choices? And these are big questions that it's addressing. Yeah, the big touchstone I get, and I get this from the music, there's a touchstone of Clockwork Orange for me. And every time I hear, especially the music, that's the kind of the synth electronic music, that's what's coming through. Now, how far you take that kind of connection is debatable. It's certainly doing different stuff, and that is a thing that came to me. The production design is absolutely stunning. The production designer had previously worked on, I think, Captain Marvel. She worked on Black Panther, and I mean, if you look at Black Panther, that looks incredible as well. I mean,
so those two movies, Captain Marvel and Black Panther, are like two of my favorites. Like, I actually thought they were really, really good. Like, yeah, I enjoyed those.
But like the amount of times I've been watching with my wife, who likes the Marvel films, she does enjoy them. She's not as kind of engrossed in it as I am. But we've been watching Loki, and the amount of times we've talked about how amazing it looks. It's that kind of retro, vintage kind of look. And there are similarities with some of the production design in terms of Clockwork Orange. You don't have necessarily kind of the whites of Clockwork Orange, but that kind of 70s aesthetic is absolutely there, and he's done it in really kind of interesting ways. And that's just the look of it, and the sound of it. Now, what you have, and I don't want to get into it because it is such a fun story that they kind of talk about, is you have at the centre of it, you have this character of Loki, Tom Hiddleston, which if any other actor was playing him, wouldn't have the same impact. They kind of caught lightning in a bottle when they cast him in that role, both kind of in this, but kind of going back to when he first got the role in obviously Thor and the Avengers films, so perfect for that role and the impact it has on the audience. And his kind of character taking you through this story is just kind of superb. And it's so likable, but so kind of clever, and enables you to do so many things because the so much groundwork has been laid before. I don't know if any of you guys have seen on Disney Plus. They do have a series called Marvel Legends, and this is basically for all of their new films and their kind of TV shows. They have like a very brief, it's usually like 8-minute episode based on a specific character. So they did Wanda, they did the Vision, they did Winter Soldier and Falcon, all this stuff, and each episode is a single character, and it basically is a montage of their time through the MCU. But it's edited together really nicely. So, for example, with Loki, you watch that, and this is all set. It doesn't give you any stuff from before the series, but it just gives you a through line of how that character developed. So when it kind of comes to his end point in Endgame, you've seen that entire transition from the first Thor through to Avengers, through to Thor Ragnarok, and all that stuff, ending up in kind of Endgame, and you see that progression, which then leads you into Loki, the TV series, and that has just taken him, for me, through the roof. I'm not sure if I prefer this or WandaVision, but for me, they're basically on a par. I've been so impressed with this. It's been so good. It's
the best Doctor Who series that's ever been on TV, really.
I mean, Doctor Who has been pretty good.
Yeah, but this strike. I've been watching it. I've been going like, is this? This is really, really good. Is this watching this feels like, is this what I'm missing out on with Doctor Who? Like the odd couple relationship, the time bending, traversal across different sort of zones and alien planets, and sort of like the cocky sort of person who puts himself in these situations but is so comfortable in his own skin that he doesn't necessarily feel like the need to like blend in, or definitely doesn't feel the need to compensate for his own sort of affable nature. Like it strikes me as I think and it's got a lot of these sensibilities, and I think it helps that the director herself is British. I know that Kate Herron, I know that she's gone on Twitter to say things like, in the first episode, for example, there are like elements of Wallace and Gromit, and other like touchstones like that. So I think there definitely feels like there is this like Doctor Who-esque angle to the whole thing. I think it's the best out of the three, hands down. I think, other than the cinematography being slightly off, like it is terribly dark, and like the direction is sort of 70% superb. The action scenes, I think, are a little bit sloppy and not really at Marvel's best. But other than that, I think it is like it's managed to do so much across what is now 5 episodes that exemplifies the stretch and the range and the sort of tonality of what would be a normal comic book series arc, which is how I've always like examined these TV shows. 6 episodes, usually an arc in a comic book series, about 6 issues. And yeah, this one just like, especially the last episode 5, with the amount of like little nods and little Easter eggs, and things like there's a Polybius cabinet in the background. There's never referenced to at all. It just sit there, and like you know about that if you know about the Polybius conspiracy. And then there's other little things, other little Easter eggs, like a frog Thor, I think it is, trapped in a jar, and at one point the USS Eldridge turns up in this void that they're in. So there's just these little moments that are constantly, especially in this episode, that constantly getting you to like pick up your phone and do like some digging and some really interesting things. And it's just great being able to see a program that embraces that sort of wackiness and that sort of boldness that quite a lot that the mediums of comics has. I think WandaVision did this in some regards, but kind of like at the end kind of like rolled back and just went to like safe Marvel. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was pretty much the safest of the safe and reasonably unspectacular, whereas this is like full on, like, and I think it helps, as you were saying, when you've got a lead such as Tom Hiddleston to carry a lot of that weight with it. I'm genuinely excited for the last episode, and unfortunately it will live and die on that last episode, because WandaVision was like incredible up until the last episode. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was average until the last episode, so it's kind of got to earn its payoff now, I think.
We talk about kind of Tom Hiddleston, but I think kind of an unsung hero, and I've been really surprised.
Wow.
Is the character of Owen Wilson, the character of Mobius, played by Owen Wilson. Because when I saw he was casting it, you kind of like, really Owen Wilson, the guy who kind of did like the movies with Vince Vaughn, the kind of slacker human. You're like, really, this is the direction. But like, and obviously that's just an area of his career where he kind of made a lot of money from it and was very, very successful in that, but doesn't perhaps lend itself to a wider kind of acting range. But he has been absolutely superb in this and has really, really surprised me. And his character is very kind of subtle and nuanced, but is kind of eminently watchable. And you kind of really want to spend time with this character, especially the dynamic between you have like your Joker with I don't mean that in the sense of the character, but kind of a joking character with Loki and Mobius the straight man. And kind of that dynamic, that odd couple again, does really work kind of fantastically well. And it again develops over the course of kind of the series as you learn more about all of the characters and the kind of the Time Variance Authority, which is the kind of this kind of overarching organization who control time as the center of this whole thing. It's a massive kind of story, and obviously this is all part of the comics. I'm not a kind of a comic aficionado, so I don't know any of this. All of this stuff is new to me. It's done in a way that I never feel like I'm lost. Even though they're talking about a lot of complex stuff, and it's the relatability of the characters, the likes of the Loki, as relatable as he is, but also kind of the Mobius character, who is an everyman. He's a normal, ordinary guy. He's just a guy in an office. And I never thought you would be in a situation where you have this character of Loki, this larger-than-life character. Basically, let's tell a story of him with an office job, and it actually be great. And that's the kind of the confidence they have now that they can do all this stuff. And with these TV shows, they have that ability to just take their time a little bit. And like, you could do it over a film, the length of a kind of a film, but this series is going to be roughly 6 hours long, this series. So you lose so much of that small, nuanced conversation where you really get to dig into the characters, and it makes so much difference with this stuff. With WandaVision as well, obviously WandaVision was shorter episodes because of the nature of that show and what that show was trying to do, whereas this one is a bit longer, so you do have that 6 hour kind of length over the course of it. But it's just, as Sam, as you said, I can't wait to find out where it's going to go. It's a shame that I don't think these series are going to kind of move on, because I want to spend more time with these characters. They do feel, at least, like these are going to be kind of one-shot series, because there is a story to tell here, as opposed to let's run with them. So it feels like with WandaVision, her story has been told, and that will then be picked up in the movies. It felt like Falcon and the Winter Soldier story was told, it can carry on. And the same with Loki. I'm fascinated to know what it's going to set up, because in some form, all the other series have set something up going forward. And Loki, as a character, is completely separate to everyone else in the MCU from where the films left off. Spoilers, if you haven't seen Endgame, if you haven't seen Infinity War, but you really should have by now. Spoilers, he's dead. So he's completely separate to everybody else. And so I'm fascinated to know where his story then comes back into it, because it will, in some form, I'm sure it will. because that's what they're doing with these. This is part of a wider universe.
Peter, I want to ask you a question. I want you to think about all the choices you've made in life
God.
that have taken
God, no.
that have taken you now to the man you are now, Peter Willington.
Yeah, Christ.
And imagine, because they say, you know, parallel universe theory, that every choice that we make, there is a version of the universe that is created, which is the alternative choice that we made, that kind of branching path.
Yeah, he's having a good
Imagine
time.
that you kind of went to some kind of Peter Willington reunion and you encountered all those people, all those Peter Willingtons that made the other choice.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of a atmosphere would be in that space? How would you characterise
I'd imagine
that?
they'd still all just look exactly the same.
Just haggard. Well, half of them haven't turned up because they're asleep.
There will be that Peter Willington who is a pub landlord.
Oh yeah, and a monk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one that is a pub landlord and a monk.
Oh my God, how good would that be?
A pint of a pint of Smith's, please. Why?
You'd have one of them would be a fencer, the other one would be a cyclist,
And one of them would be a
Yeah.
fencing cyclist.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
One of them would respect law enforcement and not ask for a full cavity search.
No, I cannot.
Every
I
Willington
cannot-
will do that. It's
I
a
cannot
constant.
envision a universe in where that doesn't happen. Honestly, I honestly can't.
You know, I want you to imagine that you've been told, Pete, that actually you are a variant of Peter Willington. You made a choice that the actual proper Peter Willington didn't do.
Yeah.
You therefore have to be removed from that timeline.
Removed from the sacred timeline. I just want to know what food's being served, to be honest.
What my
At your party of infinite Willingtons, yeah.
Yes, because there will be a Peter Willington there who didn't have that, you know, that new lease of life. There'll be the one that will be banging energy drinks.
There's one there who still just eats bacon from a tub.
Oh yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And a burger out of a tin.
Oh, beautiful stuff.
Gentlemen, I want you to find a comfortable place in the room.
I mean, I'm sat down. Is that enough?
If it's comfortable, Pete, for you, are you in comfortable trousers, loose-fitting trousers? What's going on down there?
No, I'm definitely in trousers. Yeah, go on.
I mean, I've got my headphones on. I can't. My sofa's over there. I would like to sit on the sofa, but I haven't got my headphones, so I can't hear you then.
So I'd like you to kind of center yourself, you know, check in with your body, this kind of thing, really. That's it. And I just want you to focus on the breath, you're breathing. So breathing deeply in through the nose and out through the mouth. And I want you to just focus on that active breathing. So, you know, when you're kind of breathing in more than usual, say, for example, and you can kind of feel the diaphragm expanding just below the rib cage, and you're conscious of that sensation of the breath going in and out, just focusing on that sensation. In and out. And in and out. So I just want to talk about Gentle Rain.
Let's quite enjoy that.
It's a lovely little game that I pre-ordered quite a while ago, and my interest was piqued for two reasons. The first one is that it's a game that is purported to work just as well for a solo experience as it is with multiple players. And spoilers, it does really, really well.
Okay.
And secondly, because its designer, so its creator, Kevin Wilson, was the creator of Arkham Horror. And my curiosity was piqued for that second reason when I looked at the game and how it played, and this felt very unlike the Cthulhu kind of mythos, that kind of world, really. This is a relaxing, meditative experience of a game. Now, often when we think of those descriptors, we think of something that is unbearably light, that is something that doesn't require too much thought. And I kind of really want to kind of clamp down or stop any kind of naysayers from saying, "Oh yeah, this is too light, man. It's too light." Actually, this is a very interesting. It's a very interesting experience that it cultivates, really, where there's just enough of a challenge that kind of keeps you switched on, but it's a very simple premise behind it that allows you to kind of go with that flow, really. It's almost like what we were talking about, ASMR, really. That there's something very insanely soothing about this game. And I've talked to Sam about this quite a lot, because Sam secretly also pre-ordered this. I didn't know Sam had pre-ordered this. And
it was just a little bit of fun. And like, I pre-ordered it, but didn't tell Kris. And then every time he was like, oh yeah, Gentle Rain still hasn't dispatched. I ordered it ages ago. I'll be like secretly like, yeah, tell me about it. And then when he was just like, oh, Gentle Rain's dispatched, I was like, yeah, I already know. Wink, wink. And it was just a little bit of fun.
I like the all by yourself. You've been having this very gentle level of fun, just by yourself.
Just imagine everything else I'm doing behind all of your backs for a little bit of fun.
Yeah, it is the epitome of skullduggery. So what you have is a little box, very tiny little box, and you get these tiles, and they're generally squared tiles, but they've got the corners cut off, and I'll explain why in a little bit. And on the edges of them, you've got half of a blossom, and it's essentially like a jigsaw. It has those feelings of when you've got a stack of tiles in Carcassonne, where you place a tile, and then you place another one, and you're trying to kind of connect the blossom tiles with each other, the blossoms with each other, really. The moment you get 4 in a kind of a square, that will create an empty circle, and that means you can take one of the blossom tokens, and providing that blossom token matches one of the flowers surrounding it, you place it in that centre. And you just keep going as far as you can, and the aim is to try and get all 8 blossom tokens there. That sounds unbearably simple, unbearably light. Why should I care about a game like this?
Well, it sounds unbearably simple and unbearably light for a person whose sort of tabletop lineage includes.
I've just been looking at Kevin Wilson's. It's insane.
It's insane. So he did Doom, the board game, which is one of the better sort of games based on a license. Fury of Dracula 2nd edition. Did the Game of Thrones board game. Did Fortress America, which is a very well regarded game that's now sadly out of print. Did a version of Cosmic Encounter. Did Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, the one that I've got that's over there, that's way too complicated for its own good. Did Android.
Descent.
Did Descent, which is one of my favourite games of all time. Did Elder Sign, Arkham Horror 2nd edition. Went on to do just so much stuff, like RPGs. He's been doing Dungeons and Dragons tabletop games. Been doing Turtle stuff with IDW, worked for Fantasy Flight. My God, like this is so much stuff, and you're telling me that he's made some simple, lightweight. I just don't believe you, Kris.
No, it's really interesting because I've obviously played this quite a lot because I quite like those lighter, fairer games. Like I like Tokaido, for example, which I know a lot of people don't like.
I like Tokaido, yeah.
I really like Tokaido, and there's a place for that, I think.
Yeah.
So I've played this with lots of people, and I've played this with people who are kind of like quite hardcore gamers, and they kind of turn their noses up at games that aren't like overly strategic, that you haven't got that ability to plan ahead, because you can't in this, because it's the luck of what tiles you draw. And they really, really like it. I introduced it to my parents, and they go on about that game. And Sam made a very interesting point, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit, around the tiles themselves, because trying to work out what is it about this game that just seems to work. And maybe it's because in the current climate we're in, having that something that's meditative and relaxing, and it does feel relaxing. I know we spoke about a few podcasts ago about me buying a jigsaw of the moon, because I felt that need to just kind of go into the zone with something that wasn't a screen, something that I didn't necessarily have to engage certain parts of my cognitive faculties to kind of enjoy. There's something quite nice and relaxing about this process. But I think there's something that just really kind of lands with this game, really. And I should say it is created by Kevin Wilson, but it's designed by Chris Bilheimer. I ordered it through Mondo Games, the company that have kind of produced this, really. But Sam, you've been playing this in your lunch break. You've been sending me pictures of you playing in your lunch breaks while at work.
Yes, I have, and it's exemplary. It's gone into my notes as one of my top board games of this year, and I think it must be a sign of that designer's lineage about how well it works. Definitely as a purposefully meditative game. It's not a game that is relaxing enough or is light enough that makes you feel like you've taken a break or taken a break from the screen. I genuinely believe it's a game that recreates the feeling of meditation through its design. When I played it for the first time, there were just a few things about it that struck me as things that would show up quite early on in playtesting that you wouldn't usually include in a game. Like, it's pretty much 100%, maybe a little bit like 90%. It's basically 90% luck based, where if you get anywhere throughout the game, you're just drawing tiles from a card, and depending on where you place them, you can kind of increase the odds in terms of being able to get all of these wooden tokens down on the table. But really, it's entirely luck based, and that really struck me early on because I was really surprised by that, because like that's one thing that, especially in like modern board game design, that designers try to mitigate and adjust for straight away, because that's the kind of like, and I think it's a kind of like thing that's in the that's like on, I think it's kind of one of those things that in the scene, in inverted commas, like that's the one thing that most people don't like. It's like, well, it's all luck based, and you know. But I think that is the cleverest touch that A Gentle Rain does, because the majority of it is luck based. You just have to let yourself go. You have to let yourself just leave strategy behind and just put all of that out of the window, so you can just enjoy and sit down and be there with the game and in the moment. And that's the specific part about meditation, is about doing something, doing an exercise, whether it's breathing or focusing on a mantra or a specific image that puts you in a moment and allows the rest of your mind just to escape and relax and wind down. And A Gentle Rain just manages to do that in spades, and it's all through its design. And I think it's all very intentional, that you can't count cards, that you can't try and predict what is coming, that you can't really apply any grand strategy. There isn't no kind of like, well, you found the Joker piece, which means you can now move 2 pieces around at will, or take 2 pieces off the table and replace them with 2 pieces from the... Oh, you've got the Scry card, which means you can lift the first 2 up and see what's going to be coming next. Like, there is none of that. And it means that you just have, as a player, you just have the freedom to just go and just put tiles down and see where they match. And as well as the actual design, there's lovely little bits of general production which helps create this feeling. So the backs of the tiles are actually, they've got this sort of almost like this mandala design, and it's embossed. So when I play it, I generally am just sitting there, and it almost becomes almost like a rosemary bead almost, and I can sit there with, you know, feeling the embossed pattern on the back of the tiles, and you can almost like twirl it in your fingers. So it almost starts, even that like physicality, the tactility of the game is also playing into that state of mindfulness, that state of meditation, of concentrating on something very mundane and very small in order to let yourself relax. And every lunch break, I'm playing it. Every chance I get at work, I'm just going and find myself a corner and listening to chill beats on Spotify and just playing it for half an hour. And I think it is an exemplary piece of design. I think it's very dangerous to overlook it for how simple it is and how much it relies on luck. I think with almost all of the designers gone into stopping themselves adding stuff in, and I think that's a very brave thing, especially in, like, you know, some of the board games that we might come on to later on in this podcast. And I also think the manual is beautifully written. Like, that you take off the top of the box, and the first thing it says is something like, take a deep breath and relax. And all through the manual, it has these little points, these little touchstones, where it's just very concentrated on the fact that you're here just to enjoy this moment. You're not here for high scores. You're not here for doing X, Y, and Z. You can get, there is, you know, a scoring mechanism, because of course, but the manual is even written in a way that is all about getting you into this mood, getting you into this moment of mindfulness. Like, there's a beautiful thing at the end where it's talking about cooperative play, and it's just like, you know, you can play this with other people if you want to, And if you are, while they're taking their turn, just sit back, look at the lake, and relax. And I love it for that kind of design ethos that it has. I think as someone who has dabbled quite heavily into meditation in the past, this is the closest that I've come to replicating that same sort of feeling, but through playing a game.
Yeah, it's really special, and it's one of those few games where I can imagine households out there, this might be the only game they own. And usually when you think of a household owning one game, you think of Monopoly, you think of Cluedo. You wouldn't, yeah, and that's what they make, the sound they make when they play them. You wouldn't usually think of a game like this, but I could genuinely see this being used, I could imagine this being in a therapist's office or a counsellor's office, as a kind of as a tool to kind of get into meditation, as a way into it. Because meditation, as Sam alluded to, isn't just sitting in the lotus position. It is that ability to focus on the now, and often that comes from the breath, but it can equally be the soles of the feet when one is walking or running, say, for example. Here, that tactility is so crucial, really. It's a very, very special game.
When was the last time we all played Civilization? Was it 4 or 5 that we were playing together?
We played 5.
5, yeah, because it was we never played 4. It was either 5, and then Pete wanted us to get 6, and we all said no.
I do own 6.
I did get 6.
6 is great.
Okay, I'm just the only holdout.
Yeah,
Dan's the only one who didn't get 6. Yeah, they're interesting games, aren't they?
Well, the first couple of hours of it we've played the first couple of hours about 16 times.
I know. Yeah.
I love Civ. I love and specifically the era of Civ I like is Civ 5 and 6. Like the previous Civs, they're all very well and good. I didn't play them. They aren't my jam. I love Civ 5, Civ Rev, which was amazing. Civ Rev was absolutely incredible. Civ Rev 2 was great. I think that's still available, actually. Well worth playing. And yeah, I love that kind of where it kind of accepted its board game roots a little bit more. The video games,
yeah,
that's when I liked it. When they started using hexes, that's when I liked it.
And what is it that you like? Like, do you like the actual replication of like building a society, or is it just the tech tree-ness of it?
Can I guess at what you like? Because I think what you like is pretending to be someone's friend and slowly gaining their confidence. And just as they drop their guard, you stab them in the back. I think I think you do that, and then you run away giggling to yourself. And I think that's the kind of the crux. That's the kind of that sweet spot of that game, is where it all makes sense for you.
Now,
reading Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Now that is a moment I enjoy. The delicious moment where I get to stab Elizabeth in the back, basically. But no, the thing I love about it actually is role playing as a benevolent dictator, basically. So I always play as a bit of a megalomaniac. Yeah, so I love to role play as a leader of a society that I would like to see. So what I always do is I always go peaceful. I always push into the sciences, into the arts, and I build up our culture. I build up our science. Make sure everyone's well fed. Make sure that we expand out. I'm generally quite militantly atheist, like which is not quite me in real life. But like I'm generally like, no, keep those.
The military definitely exists.
But sure. But
oh my god, I'm starting to worry about, like, in this alternative Peter Willington gathering when the dictator turns up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
At the pub.
Emphasis on dick.
Yeah. And I like carbs, so taters are good as well. But the other part, I was dumb. So the other. But what I like to do is I like to role play as that benevolent dictator, so that when the first enemy turns up at my borders with the military hardware that they have, I crush them. And I just do not stop. I send them back to the Dark Ages with just an overwhelming military supremacy. I'm like, do not touch my philosophical, my beautiful philosophy reading. art creating people, or I will come at you with my, I don't know, Egyptian chariots. They're the ones I quite like. I quite like playing as Cleopatra, which you can probably see quite a lot of about how I play. Also, fun side note: if you put a photo of me into that Google Arts app where it says "Who do you look like from history," two of the people that come up are Napoleon Bonaparte and Hitler.
Wow! Oh.
Well, there's that third one in that painting in Salzburg,
and there's that third one, the painting in Salzburg, of that woman who's like, I don't like this.
Well, we've been lucky enough to get sent a game from Osprey Games called Imperium, and we got two different versions of this game, Imperium Legends and Imperium Classics, and what they are is they're essentially like civilization games, like Sid Meier's Civ 1 through 6, but instead of using like a hex-based board to recreate it, essentially it uses like deck building mechanics, so a bit like something like Star Realms. So instead of like growing your civilization out from a central point, you're essentially growing your civilization inside a deck of cards. And it's like the complete sort of antithesis of what we're talking of Gentle Rain, where Gentle Rain is very sort of slim and sort of purposefully trim and lean board game in terms of like its approach to engineering and design. Imperium is a incredibly more complex and nuanced experience, as you probably would expect from a game that's aiming to recreate sort of like the buildings of civilizations. So this is from Nigel Buckle and David Turchi, who we might be familiar with if you remember when we've spoken of before about Roman Roll. He was one of the designers on that, and this joins one of the sort of higher rated games that I now have in my collection. I'm not really one to follow the sort of user ratings on the ever infamous Board Game Geek, but this is at the moment Imperium Classics and Imperium Legends. It's currently sitting at a lovely 8.1, which puts it alongside Concordia, but not as high as Jaws of the Lion, Kris, which is 8.8.
Oh, well, it's good to know that we are, part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah,
really?
yeah. It's just good to know sometimes where you play a game and go, oh, this is kind of
where we
this
stand.
is kind of good, and then you check Board Game Geek and it's got 8.1. It's like, well, okay, then we're obviously, we're still on the trend, on the zeitgeist.
Still got it.
So I think what will appeal to you, Pete, about these games is that inside the box, and it comes in this lovely, it's quite a big box, but you open it up and everything has already been segmented for you. There's not like a big sort of like dump of cards and that's it. There's this plastic insert where all the cards you need live in their very specific slots, and as part of that card sort of organization system, in each box there's 8 different civilizations that you can essentially like peruse like a menu at a restaurant and go, yeah, I think I'll be the Egyptians this evening, or I think I'll be the Arthurians if you're in the Legends set. And the civilizations themselves range from like the Egyptians to the Greeks, the Celts, Romans, even some mythical ones like the Utopians and the Atlanteans. And they each play somewhat differently to each other. Some of them have different sort of win states. So the Arthurians, for example, are all about going on quests, and essentially you win if you manage to reach the Holy Grail, rather than any of the standard win states that everyone else is going for. The Celts, they win, I think, by making sure there's lots of unrest, which I don't know if that's thematic or not. But yeah, so essentially how the game works is everyone picks up their civilization from the box, and there's like a central sort of store that is kind of typical to deck building games. And the idea is just like in most games of this genre, you'll be playing cards from your hand and discarding them, drawing cards from a deck, discarding them, and then when you can't draw any more cards from your deck. You'll be shuffling together cards that you've bought or cards that you've upgraded into a new deck, and therefore hopefully building a better collection of cards. So how Imperium works is every time you do that process of shuffling all the cards you bought and all the cards you upgraded into your deck, that represents your civilization progressing through a certain stage. And if you do that often enough, you go from being a barbarian civilization to becoming an empire. And it's been really nice to play something that, as a player, you can really get your teeth into. And I sort of touched on this a bit when we were talking about Unmatched and how
definitely
you get a deck of cards that is yours and that is unique and in this instant represents a civilization, and then you essentially have to learn about this civilization and learn what it is that makes them tick, what it is that is essentially going to make them, what is essentially going to make them progress as a civilization, what is going to make their engine, as it were, work most efficiently. And I played this quite a few times, and it even has a very, very good solo mode where you play against this bot that essentially just kind of like plays, like automates part of the experience, but you can just kind of are just free just to concentrate on like getting the most out of your civilization as it progresses. And yeah, as I said, like it's just wonderful to be able to really take a deep dive into something that is as complex as it needs to be when I think it's dealing with these kind of themes and this kind of approach, and something that has really stretched me in terms of like interacting with people around the table. I know that you and me, Kris, we've played this a few times.
Yeah.
And like each play has been like, whereas Gentle Rain is 20 minutes on your lunch break, this is like an hour and a half, 2 hours of really solid sort of deck building and card management and all that kind of stuff.
But it does that thing that deck builders do so very, very well. When you have that pile of cards that is on your, I know, excuse me if I'm getting the name wrong, but on your civilization, which you can only access once you've managed to cycle through the deck and, do that classic Civ thing of moving from being akin to a barbarian to a civilized kind of group of people, really. And knowing that that's there and having that physically represented is really lovely, that it's a literal deck. I go, okay, I'm going to work through this as well. It also does that thing that I really, really like, where Sam and I don't really interfere with each other's setup at all. No. There is a central kind of tableau of cards that we can kind of get from, or we can kind of, you can do things to kind of disrupt each other.
Some civilizations do interact with each other a bit more. What's great is at the back of the guide, it kind of gives you an indication of a bit of a history of who the civilizations were, a difficulty rating, and a sort of an idea of how they play. So the earlier difficulties, sort of the 1 or 2 stars, don't necessarily interact with the other civilizations around them as much, but later on in the game there are other mechanics where you are essentially able to attack other civilizations. You're able to essentially like there are things in the shop called unrest cards, and essentially the more that you buy from the shop, the more that you're picking up these unrest cards, and they work as basically trash in your hand. So the more unrest you've got in your deck, the more you're pulling rubbish basically into your hand that's not doing anything for you. So there are certain ways that other civilizations can force you to pick up those unrest cards and force you to like have to, right, I've got to get rid of all of these before I can then move on. So that was more of a symptom, Kris, of like the difficulties of what we played with. Yeah.
But that's a really good point, because actually immediately now I want to play as King Arthur. Yeah. You've very kindly given me, I don't know if to borrow or to
you
have.
Can have
I think. Yeah. Oh, tar lad. The classic version, and you've got the legends, and there is I've watched lots of reviews of this because I want to teach it to others, because it's just received glowing reviews across the board, really. And a lot of it is because I want to try, not only do I want to try this deck, but I want to see what this deck looks like when paired against that deck there. And it does that thing that Civ does really, really well, where you're plugged on a map and it doesn't necessarily adhere to the geography as we know it, and you'll have these different empires, these different civilizations rubbing up against each other, creating these interesting tensions, alliances, conflicts. And to have that with a deck of cards, it reminded me, Sam, a lot of like, it feels like what Oh My Goods does to some degree.
Yes.
And it may sound like I'm talking quite a complex game here, but actually the iconography on the cards is really clean. It's very clear. I picked up the language of it very, very quickly. And I'm not somebody who plays a lot of Civ games, particularly like board game or card game variants of them, really. And I was amazed how quickly I picked it up.
The one thing I will say in regards to that, I think it is quite a daunting prospect to put in front of some people. Again, and this is strange how it's linking back to when we spoke about Unmatched, but again, it kind of bears a lot in similarities of putting Magic the Gathering in front of someone for the first time, because Imperium has a very, very interesting manual where the first sort of 4 pages, and this is the same way that you would teach someone Magic the Gathering, the first sort of 4 pages explains like the main mechanics of the game. And by that I mean like, this is what you do on your turn. You've got 3 choices of what you can do on your turn. You either buy something from the shop, you either get rid of unrest cards, or you discard your hand or do something. Then if you trigger this, this happens. If you trigger that, that happens. And then it's the next player's turn. And that's it. The rest of the book is a glossary of all the terms that are on the cards. So essentially, this is like Magic the Gathering, where you put it in front of someone and go, right, you've got mana, you play that to cast spells, hit the other opponent, get them down to life. But then there's all of these glossary of other terms that change that original state. So essentially you kind of, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, I think, with this, is that it's great in terms of, I just put it in front of Kris and was just like, just trust me, and like handed in the glossary, and you know, he looked at his card of hands and was just like, oh, so that what that does, oh, that's what that does, oh, that's what that does, right, now I know what I'm going to do on my turn. And then it slowly from that position, like slowly sort of speeds up, where you learn your deck and you learn what you're going to be doing, so you know exactly, so you don't need to rely on the glossary anymore. So that's, I think, a bit at its detriment, is that kind of, it is quite slow paced in terms of like to learning, but I feel like it's almost part of its advantage that you kind of can just like plonk it down and pick up a civilization and go, right, let's go, let's run with it. I know the shape of a turn. All I need to worry about is what was going on my cards. And I think Kris was quite annoyed with me because he kept on going, oh, what does this mean? I went, just look at the guide, Kris. Look at the guide. He's like, what does this mean? I was like, just look at the guide.
I liked it, Sam, when you described just then that I had a card of hands.
A card of hands. There probably is a card of hands within. There's probably a card called the Card of Hands within Imperium. But who would I recommend this to? I mean, if you love civilization games, are interested in like other civilizations, then I think this is a really interesting game to kind of get yourself into. Like, it's exceedingly generous. Like, when I first read that it was like 8 civilizations in one box, and then there's 8 completely different civilizations in another box, and they all play differently. So between me and Kris, we have 16 different civilizations to choose from. That kind of blew me away in terms of like the generosity of options and different ways of being able to play. So there's definitely, like, you're definitely going to get your money's worth with this.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I like the idea, Sam, that if I wanted to go around to yours to play it, I could just take one deck. I take one of my civilizations, stick it in my back pocket, and I could walk around to yours.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll probably drive. And
yeah,
we'll just. And there's something that feels, again, like, as you say, Sam, the Magic the Gathering. This is my deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And the more you play it, the more you'd specifically be able to learn the specifics of that deck and how it worked and what kind of things you need to buy from the shop to benefit it. And there is a theme within that as well. So like the deck of the Greeks don't necessarily go for like land grabbing and stuff like that. It's a lot more about the philosophy, like the social progression. Whereas I said the Celts before and the Romans, there is a lot more of that like attacking military aggression. So there is theme and there is structure within those civilizations that do match and do give you decisions on what do I need to do here? What do I need to play? Well, I need to play more like, the actual civilization that I've picked.
That was another episode of Staying In with myself, Kris Darby, Daniel Frost, Sam Turner and Peter Willington. Or, we don't know really, it was one of the variants of Peter Willington. Loki was a fantastic TV series. I literally just caught the finale yesterday as of recording this, and I think they really did stick the landing with that one. We were all a little bit worried about it, especially Pete. But they've done a really good job. Sophia Di Martino is just fantastic. And I really, really love Natalie Holt's score. And speaking of music, I have been keeping updated our Spotify page for the podcast. And essentially anything we experience that has its own piece of music, we have cultivated different playlists that respond to that, really. And they're kind of tea-themed because that's something that we all agree on, at least. And I'm very much looking forward to picking a track from the fantastic Loki score and putting it in one of our playlists, really, there. So stayinginpod@gmail.com is where you can email us if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. Maybe you are a variant of Peter Willington who just wants to stay in touch and say that I am the real Peter Willington. That's also fine. That would be a great subject heading to see in an email. You may want to just ask us a question or take umbrage with the glowing reviews we've given the 3 things we've spoken about in this episode. That is also fine. We're also on social media feeds as well, trying to be social, trying to be active. At Staying In Pod, we'll have you covered for basically the big ones. And on our Instagram page in particular, which has been quite active, I do a little show and tell of A Gentle Rain on there for those who are curious and want to see it in action. We'll see you in 2 weeks for another episode of the pod. Hopefully have all 4 of us there again, because it's lovely when we're all together and we try and move heaven and earth to make sure that we can get that good social time with each other, and hopefully you enjoy that as well. But until next time, look after yourself, take care, and speak to you soon. Bye.